именем Содружества независимых государств я прекращаю свою деятельность на посту президента СССР.
In 1991, the world was shocked as they saw the Hamlet-Sickle flag of Soviet Union being brought down, and a superpower of its time was losing its global status. In this video, we will discuss how and why the Soviet Union collapsed, and how was the USSR decommunized. We have to start with the coup attempt of 1991. On August 19, 1991. Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev was enjoying a stay in a Crimean resort until he was approached by four men, which were his chief of staff. First, Deputy Chairman of USSR Defense Council, Secretary of Central Committee of Communist Party of Soviet Union, and Chief of Soviet Army Ground Forces, along with KGB Chief of Security for the party, who demanded that he signed a document declaring a state of emergency with transfer power to his Vice President, Gennady Yanovev. But Gorbachev refused and denounced them as blackmailers. He and his family were subsequently placed under house arrest. But allowing members of his personal bodyguards helped him stay informed about the coup progress through makeshift receivers. In August 19, it was announced on state TV that Gorbachev was unable to fulfill his duties to Iraq, and Yanovev assumed the presidency. An emergency committee consisting of 8 members was formed, and they issued Resolution Number 1, which imposed press censorship, banned strikes and demonstrations, and claimed that country was in mortal danger. In response, the population of Moscow began protesting and trying to persuade the troops to defy orders. Boris Yeltsin, the president of Russian Soviet Republic, claims to stop attack in front of the White House of Soviet Union and condemned the coup, calling for a general strike. He declared the coup illegal and labeled the plotters as criminals and traitors. Tanks appeared on the streets of Moscow, and barricades were erected around the White House. On August 20, Yeltsin issued an order assuming control of military and security forces in Russian territory. Violent clashes occurred near the White House, but the expected assault on the building did not happen, as coup leaders' orders were not followed. On August 21, Communist Party Secretariat demanded a meeting between Gorbachev and Yanovev. The coup ultimately collapsed, and the plotters were arrested while trying to escape. Gorbachev was reinstated by Supreme Soviet of USSR, and all decrees of emergency committee were annulled. Yeltsin declared that all enterprises in Russia were under his government control. Aftermath of the coup attempt ultimately failed due to a combination of factors. RD and KGB officers refused to carry out orders to attack the White House, and plotters had no plan B for Gorbachev's refusal to cooperate. Their failure to arrest Yeltsin before he reached the White House allowed him to rally support and defend the democratically elected president, and Yeltsin became president through a vote of Russian Supreme Court. The people of Moscow turned out in large numbers to support Gorbachev, and local police did not enforce the plotters' orders. The plotters underestimated the importance of public opinion in the era of democratization. The population's unwillingness to blindly obey orders from above. The plotters were mainly ethnic Russians and belonged to military-industrial complex. The coup was a culmination of a conflict between old and the new political, economic, and social orders that had been underway since Gorbachev had risen to power. In 1995, his perestroika and glasnost reforms had sent in motion forces that were bound to collide at some point. Following the failed coup, Gorbachev and his family returned to Moscow on August 22. And coup plotters and sisters Marshal Akhromayev's party administrator Lushina committed suicide, which rumors say were murders. Lukyanov, identified as chief ideologist of the juntas, denied involvement but resigned and was later arrested. An investigation into the coup attempt was established but later dissolved, and much of the Communist Party archives remained classified. Yeltsin banned party organization in all armies in Russia, and an honorary rally was held in front of Russian parliament to celebrate the fall of KGB. A statue of Fyodor Brzezinski, the founder of Soviet secret police, was toppled in Moscow, symbolizing the shift in power. Gorbachev held a press conference where he revealed his failure to recognize that the Communist Party of the Soviet Union was unreformable, stating his intention to purge the party of reactionary forces. He resigned as the CPSU General Secretary on August 24, but remained a party member. The end of Soviet communism. The failed coup marked the downfall of Soviet communism. But the Communist Party influence had been waning since Gorbachev reforms since 1985. The coup only highlighted the weakened state of one's powerful Soviet apparatus. The party faced resentment and anger for its inability to create a modern and dynamic state and society. The economic decline of Soviet Union in the 1980s had heightened tensions, regionalism, and nationalism. And the coup, primarily aimed at suppressing attempts to expand Russian sovereignty, hastened the disintegration of the Soviet Empire. Gorbachev, who had weakened the party with his reforms, found his own influence fatally compromised by the backlash against his efforts. Leading up to the coup, two trends emerged. The public sought more autonomy from the central government, while Gorbachev attempted to maintain the unity of the Union. Violent incidents occurred throughout the country, such as the attacks on the railway station in Vilnius, Lithuania, resulting in civilian deaths. Special purpose police units were involved in these incidents and gained a reputation for brutality. Unrest also occurred in other regions, including Autonomous Oblast, Nagorno-Karabakh, which threatened to escalate into a war. Amidst the violence, the Soviet Union held its first referendum on March 19, 1991. To garner public support for Gorbachev's effort to preserve the Union, while about 76% voted in favor of preserving the Union, the percentage was significantly lower in regions where relatively enjoyed popularity. Ukraine wanted a union entirely, but states like Georgia, Moldavia, and Armenia refused to participate and conducted their own independence referendum. The Baltic republics and Georgia achieved clear majorities in favor of independence. The only referendum backfired, benefiting the republics that sought to weaken central government or break away from it entirely. Meanwhile, a pro-democracy movement emerged within Russia that called for democratic reforms. Veteran politicians of the movement recognized that achieving real change within the party structure was impossible. These events set the stage for the ultimate collapse of Soviet Union and transformative changes that followed. The rise of Yeltsin and foundation of post-Soviet Russia. Yeltsin initially supported Gorbachev, but he grew frustrated with the slow pace of reforms, leading to his political isolation. However, as mayor of Moscow, Yeltsin gained popularity by advocating political and economic freedom. In 1989, he was elected with overwhelming support and became the president of Russia in 1990, and advocated greater autonomy for the Russian public. Yeltsin aimed to establish an executive presidential system to govern independently, correcting what he saw as Gorbachev's failure to create an effective executive structure. Yeltsin formed a team consisting of former party officials, government officials, and representatives of the democratic movement. Following the failed coup attempt, Russian President Boris Yeltsin suspended the Communist Party of Russia and nationalized its property, including archives and bank accounts, transferring control to the Council of Ministers. After the failed coup, the republic swiftly moved towards independence. Belarus, Moldova declared independence in August 1991, followed by Baltic states in September. Georgia and Armenia pursued their own paths, while Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan implemented economic reforms and privatization. On December 1st, Ukraine voted for independence, and a week later, the three republics, Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine, declared the end of Soviet Union and established the Commonwealth of Independent States known as CIS. Yeltsin ordered the Russian government to resume the functions of the Soviet government, and the remaining republics signed the foundation documents of the CIS in December 1991. On December 25, 1991, Gorbachev announced his resignation as president of the Soviet Union.
Свою деятельность на посту президента СССР.
And Soviet flag was lowered, replaced by Russian flag. Russia assumed the USSR permanent seat in the Joint Security Council, and Soviet Union was formally dissolved on December 31st, 1991. What was decommunization? After the collapse of Soviet Union in 1991, the newly independent states embarked on the process of decommunization to redefine their national identities. This involved a series of legal reforms such as removing Soviet symbols from public spaces and banning communist flags and anthems. Monuments and statues of communist leaders, particularly Lenin, were dismantled. Renaming streets, cities, and institutions was another important aspect of decommunization. with a focus on severing ties to the communist past and reaffirming national identity. Educational reforms aim to provide a balanced perspective on the Soviet era, emphasizing historical aspects and promoting democratic values. The economic transformation involved transitioning from centrally planned economies to market-oriented systems, privatization, and entrepreneurship. Truth and Reconciliation Commissions were established to address human rights violations, providing victims the platform to share their experience and holding those responsible accountable. The multi-faceted process continues to shape the former Soviet republics as they strive for democracy, freedom, and distinct national identity. Notable measures including the banning of the Communist Party of Soviet Union and establishment of the Communist Party of Russian Federation, which did not have any constitutional status. Additionally, some Russian cities had their names changed back to their pre-1970 October Revolution names such as Leningrad to St. Petersburg and Stalingrad to Volgograd. In 2000, the state anthem of Soviet Union was replaced with the current Russian national anthem. Furthermore, the Wall of Grief Memorial was unveiled in Moscow in 2017 to honor the victims of political persecutions during the Soviet era, demonstrating a recognition of the past. The decommunization process in the former Soviet republics may have been officially declared complete on state level, but it cannot be claimed that communism has been entirely eradicated. There are instances where people of these nations express concerns about the political revival of the Soviet Union, with President Putin being seen as the main proponent of such sentiments. President Putin himself has been quoted as considering the revolution of Soviet Union as the greatest catastrophe of the 20th century.
Прежде всего следует признать, и об этом я уже говорил, что крушение Советского Союза было крупнейшей геополитической катастрофой века.
These views and occasional calls for a return of Soviet ideals highlight that its legacy of communism still lingers and poses ongoing challenges to the complete eradication of its influence in the region.